Sephora's biggest sale of the year is on. Get 20% off the best gifts, including makeup from brands like Rare Beauty.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
20% off skincare from brands like Glow Recipe and Summer Fridays.
These are my fave.
20% off hair care like Way and K18.
I'm obsessed.
And 20% off fragrances like Valentino, Donna, Born, and Roma.
So good.
20% off your purchase, now through December 15th. Shop now at Sephora and Sephora at Kohl's.
With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give the fan favorite everywhere belt bag, the real gift is... And when the ultra-soothing Rest Feel slides are the gift, you're really giving them... This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give little luxuries that go beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
All right. Welcome back. Fit Nation. If you're a veteran and you're struggling or feel like you are leading a path towards the darkness, stop and think about those who are around you. Think about how they truly value you, how they will miss you. You are not alone. You need to talk to someone. Someone will listen to you. If you feel like you'll be a burden to someone or feel embarrassed to talk to your friends and family, don't hesitate to call the hotline at 988 and press option 1. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at _MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell. This will keep you up to date with our latest news, episodes, and of course the stories of our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest, articulate and insightful perspective, shines new light on the concept of leadership. Her deeply personal journey, told with unflinching clarity, inspiring courage, and engaging humor, makes her story a must-see. Audiences are astounded to learn firsthand how a true leader navigates monumental life changes while never sacrificing her mission, her crews, or herself. So without further ado, let's welcome Scottie Jeanette Madden to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, Scottie. How are you?
I'm fine, Rich. Thank you. How are you?
Good. I hope that didn't shock and awe you too much, the music and stuff. So kept you.
Oh no, that's you were playing half of my playlist.
Awesome. Finally got someone. So I know when you connected with me, that I think the first thing you wrote on there was about the Dude You're Screwed show, and that lured me in there. So it made me think of Naked and Afraid plus military equals chaos, and I think that was a pretty awesome concept. I never got to see the show unless it's still in production or out there floating somewhere. But
it's still available on the Discovery website. In fact, we were the lead into Naked and Afraid. So.
There it is. I'll have to look it up on my app there.
Oh yeah, you'll dig it. You'll dig it.
So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about your background, a little more than I just blurbed out there, from as far back as you want to go to how we got to where we are now.
Wow. Okay. I am just turned 60. I've been a television professional since before I graduated from college at San Diego State. And really quickly, my career kind of bent towards adventure filmmaking, which quite quickly brought me into the realm of military veterans and active duty. And that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in being on your show is, one of the things that I made as a part of my mission in being in television is bringing everybody home alive. That was my concept. And, I will be very candid that it was my experience on Dude, You're Screwed when I was working with, at the time, active duty Captain Terry Shepard of the U.S. Army Green Berets, who really quickly, luckily I hadn't made this mistake before I met him, but he said, hey, we hate when television people lock and load or get ready to go to war. And, there's a lot of hyperbole that we tend to think that we're solving, brain cancer in television, when in truth, we're just trying to have fun and tell stories. But his point was well taken, that I think a lot of that, I think a lot of the experiences that veterans go through gets diminished when television people try to appropriate the language. So it was very quickly, but none of us did that smart. But, one thing that I got very passionate about really quickly, we did a show in Alaska, was probably one of my first really big shows, called Out of the Wild, the Alaska Experiment. And we had two incredible men who were in charge of our logistics. Now, we had a crew of 130 people in the field.
Wow.
The network kept asking us, how come we don't see any bears? I'm like, because bears are smart, and there's 130 of us out here, and they have lead-based bear spray up there. That's what they call it. But one of the men that I became really good friends with was retired Captain Jim Hastings. And he was one of the instrumental founders of Alaska Healing Hearts, which was sort of the same kind of mission as Wounded Warriors. And, I became really good friends with him, and I really got to see how he was working. And when I was in a position to actually be in charge on that show, I was the supervising producer, which is the number 2 person. So when I became the showrunner, which is the number 1 person, I was able to go back to Jim and say, hey, how can we help? How do we do this? And so we were able to bring on through Alaska Healing Hearts, several veterans who weren't able to get work anywhere else. But they were able to work on a TV crew. And I'm like, okay, who do I want? I'm out in the wilderness. I want guys who know, and girls who know what they're doing in the wilderness, man. These people knew it. So we were able to get a lot of them involved in the actual production. And I made that a practice. That was kind of, we worked out some of the bugs on that trip, and then we moved it on. But that was the reason why I wanted to be on your show. And you asked me my history. I very quickly, I started off as a camera operator and an editor, and I worked my way through the ranks until I became what's called the showrunner, which is, kind of you're in charge out there in the field. You're both the creative, top of the rank, and you're also the fiscally and legally responsible one at the top of the rank. So you're the one responsible for delivering the show to the network that everybody else thinks they bought. So, because my resume started getting bigger and bigger over on took people into dangerous parts of the world and brought them home alive and brought home a story column, my career grew there. And that's what brought me to Dude, You're Screwed. So, it's a long journey. Long. I diminished a lot of it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's still even the small bit you think you said just now is a lot, because a lot of people don't understand what went into you going from being in college at San Diego State to all the way in Alaska, filming in a whole production up there with a 130 person crew as the 2 and 1 person.
Yeah.
So that's a long journey, even if you just say it in 4 minutes. So.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you've seen as far as for you? Your story is a lot more complicated than just the entertainment business, because you have a real story that dates back to you growing up and then becoming who you are now. So I'd like to hear just a little bit of that challenge you had, because I know you grew up at a time when it was pretty much foreboding, and it was harder for you than it is now. It's a lot. I mean, it's not easy now, but it's a lot easier now than it was then.
Well, at least we have the language now, right? You
Right.
know, when I was first growing up, anytime I displayed any kind of feminine behavior, I got hit.
Ooh.
And that wasn't by my family. That's oddly, that was a person who thought that they were protecting my father. My father was a very charismatic man. If you met him, you'd completely understand. He was, he was just, everybody loved him. Men, women loved him. Everybody. He was a born leader. He walked in the room. He took command, right, of the room. I'm sorry, my dog is barking. I'm going to let her in. She wants to be a part of the show. I'll be right back.
All right.
Come on, you. We're doing a show here. So oddly, this young man, and he was a teenager at the time, idolized my father. And so many times when, my parents needed to go out, they left him in charge of me. And whenever I did anything that, felt natural to me, was too feminine to him, and I know this from his words coming at me, don't be a sissy, I got hit. And I got threatened with, what would your father say? And I thought my father loved me, and I thought he would, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong, except that it elicited this behavior from him. So, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, don't do that stuff. I was firstborn of 4, and, everybody thought I was my dad, chip off my dad's old block. And I knew how to make him happy, I loved sports. So when I excelled in sports, he was excited. But I also excelled in art, and he was happy about that too. And I excelled as a student, and he was happy about that. So he was just happy about me being happy, I think. But he was a man's man. And there were times where if I, do you want me to give you something to cry about? I was already crying. I'm like, I got one, thanks. So I bottom line is, like many trans women, I learned to suppress it. And I tried to thrive despite this. Well, it doesn't go away. Just because we get good at being able to not show it to the outside world, it makes it worse on the inside. It creates, I have a TED talk where I say it far better because I practiced it. but it was like having icicles that were lit on fire hammered into your skin at every moment of the day. I had to constantly keep this hurricane of trauma and fire away so that I could just get through my day. And it was never not a thought. And the thought was, I'm wrong. This isn't right, but I can never be right. And I can't do anything about it. And it just this unending cycle of this. And you have to use your mind to kind of get on top of it and suppress it. And I could keep it in a box for about, well, this will surprise you, for about 28 days. And then it would come out again. And gee, I wonder where that cycle came from. And then I would take me about 4 or 5 days of just basically walking around. The way I describe it is like, if you were holding on to the inside of, if you had to hold the heat shields on the space shuttle as it was re-entering.
Wow.
Because that's the only thing that was going to keep you from burning up. That's what it was like for 4 days. And then it would be 4 days after that of just shame. Like, there it was again. It came back. You didn't do anything about it. You're a terrible person. You need to die. And then it would be like trying to climb through that, miasma, and all the while acting like everything is okay. So that went on. And I thought, if I sewed them together, like if I said, well, this happened last month, it's happening now, it's probably going to happen next month. If I did that and then didn't do anything about it, then that was on me. So I never sewed those together. I just went, well, I hope that never happens again. And then tried to go off into I had a huge quiver of denial arrows, and they all had little angles on them that I could use. I had more arrows in my quiver than golfers have drivers in a bag. So I could figure out how to get past it the next time, but it never worked. I was married. I got married at about the age of 26. It was an amazing marriage. We were incredibly in love, and these are her words, not mine, I made her the happiest woman on the planet. But it still didn't go away. And one day at about year 20, I woke up at the foot of our bed at about 5 a.m. in the morning, holding 2 cups of coffee. Now, that's not strange on a Saturday morning for me to make coffee for us so we could cuddle in bed, but it was strange for me to be doing it at 5 a.m., even stranger that I didn't remember how I got there.
Wow.
And my wife, Marcy, said, wow, that's really sweet, but it's awful early for coffee. And that's when I kind of came back into my body, and I just blurted out in a far more confusing and less articulate fashion that I just told you, I'm a woman. And as soon as it fell out of my mouth and bounced off of her face and was coming back at me, I was like trying to take it back. Like I was never going to tell anybody that I was going through this. I didn't know how to tell anybody about this. I didn't know what the language was. I mean, for me growing up, it was Dr. Renee Richards trying to play professional tennis and then being eviscerated every night by late night talk show hosts to newscasters, everybody talking about this freak and she needed to die. And who the hell did she think she was? And I was like, I don't know if that's me. I don't want to play tennis. So that started a 2-week process of Marcy basically and I just hugging each other and crying. She thought I was having a nervous breakdown and I was going to say I wanted a Porsche. And she used to joke, I would have got you the Porsche. But it took about another 5 years where it was just the two of us trying to figure out what does this mean? What does this do? I didn't know what coming out would be. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew what I had been fighting my entire life. So we got together and figured it out. And, for her, when in her words, she would say, I didn't fall in love with a gender. I fell in love with a person. And if this is what's growing, and I knew this once I started to figure out, I need to do something about this now. It's out of the bag. What does this mean? If I could figure out what I wanted, then of course she would help me get it because she loved me. Right. But I didn't know what I wanted until we started slowly but surely doing it. And that's the one thing I want to tell everybody. It's like, a lot of times it feels like a solo journey, but you have to tell the person that you love, and then you have to work together and you have to go at each other's pace. A lot of trans women are like, okay, I've been holding on to this all my life. Let's do it all in one day, and like, you got to look at the people that love you catch up. So she did. And, she had to do most of the heavy lifting. Because she had to change, her ideal marriage. I was her 4th marriage, and I was her ideal marriage. She put me up as the poster child for every marriage out there, and I was always giving advice usually to the woman because the dude isn't going to take advice, right? So I would do that, but it was more because we held onto the handrail of love. Oddly enough, when unfortunately, 3 months after I came out to Marcy, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Oh. And that was part of the reason why it was 5 years of time between telling her and before I came out to the world, because it was like, okay, let's get you out of cancer and then we'll go back to me. And so we went through the motions. She had chemo and surgery and all that kind of stuff. And we had 4 really good years where we felt like cancer was gone. And so then we got back to then modifying our marriage and making room in our marriage for what was happening. And I wrote a book, and then she wrote a book. We started giving talks to colleges and businesses about, how to do this and what does it mean, and, that sort of thing. And we fought ovarian cancer for 9 years, and she passed away in 2018.
Oh, wow.
But she passed with us still in love. So, whenever I hear people say, well, I just can't wrap my head around it, or we have to agree to disagree, I'm like, yeah, fuck you. Marcy lost her King Arthur, and she had something to lose. People today who are just throwing opinions out left and right, they don't have anything to lose by doing that. And they're talking about a human being. And when you can do the work that Marcy does, well, then you can come back and talk. But until then, shut up. So anyways, that brings us to today. I mean, I'm still grieving, trying to work without her.
Right.
Isn't easy.
It's only been just 4 years or so since it occurred, so it's not easy to get over any loss, and especially someone that was your right hand for 3 decades, decades plus, and the journey both of you were going on, having that openness to do that, it's. I mean, I'm not going to say it's unheard of, but it's people don't always talk about it. That
Correct.
People stay together to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens in households all around the country, but a lot of places it's still, like you said, they didn't come out. They're waiting for the perfect time, because there's no perfect time to come out.
No.
And I know when I was growing up, I think a lot of it was ignorance for us, because we just didn't know what we didn't know.
Right.
And even when I first came in the Army, I still was pretty ignorant to anything other than what was black and white. It had to be black and white, or it wasn't right. It wasn't until I started growing as a human to understand and have empathy and sympathy, or not really sympathy, empathy towards other people's feelings and thoughts. And as I grew, it embedded in me that I had to be more open to everything, because there's everything out there. It's not just me.
Well, it comes down to, and I think the reasons why I relate to your audience is that it's, on a television set, there is a hierarchical chain of command, and you don't get into that position unless you earn the respect of everybody who's quote unquote below you, and you get that respect because you care for them, and you lead them, and you lead with empathy, and so I had the cast for Dude, You're Screwed was Terry Schaber's a Green Beret, active duty at the time. Jake Zweig was a retired Navy SEAL. John Hudson was an RAF SEER instructor. And then we had a couple of people that rotated into the other 5 slots. We always had 5 going on at the same time. And they were various military and or master guide status. When I came out to them, I didn't know this at the time, but they called the network and they said, just in case you're wondering, we're with her.
Nice.
So they didn't bat an eyelash. That was like the respect that I had as their leader, that I had earned my stripes with them. That mattered. And that's also something that, I want to tell anybody out there that is, worried about coming out, is that as long as you were a good person in the closet, you'll be okay when you come out. There's some people that it's hard because it's very traumatic being in the closet for whatever reasons, right? And that sometimes equals bad behavior or less than desirable behavior because of that trauma. And that's terrible and unfortunate. And I feel for people like that. But as long as you are a respectable human being in the closet, you'll be one when you come out. And that way and people will back you up. It's scary, but it's only because it's scary of the unknown.
Right. You fear what you don't know what you don't know at that point. And,
Exactly.
And like you said, if you were a good person on Monday, came out Monday night, Tuesday, you're still that same person. Right. It's up to that person on Tuesday to realize that you're still the same person I was talking to yesterday and having coffee with. You're still the same person.
Exactly. Look at Kristen Beck, Friday night, she went out as Chris Beck. Monday, she returns as Kristen Beck, and she's still at the Pentagon, right? At the time, it's like, yeah, well, one of the highest Navy SEALs we've ever had. Huh. Nothing changed when she wore heels. In fact, she was still shooting pretty good.
She had to get used to the heels probably, but it's different.
Well, if you've ever seen Lady Valor, it's like, why are you wearing heels right now, honey? You're killing us. We wear the appropriate shoes. We don't always wear heels.
That's a different group that wears those, and they practice.
Exactly.
So when you broke into, I know it's a slow process to break into Hollywood at any angle that you go into it. You went with the adventure way. Was it a slow process to move up, or did you hit every kind of, I guess, job along the way as you went up?
Well, yeah, you know what? I had a really bizarre. It's not. I don't recommend this way, but 2 weeks after I graduated from San Diego State from the television department, I was directing my own show.
Oh wow!
This guy had just sold a show, and he's drank in my dad's bar, and he was like, it's kind of like the dog who catches the car. He sold a show and didn't know how to produce it, right? My dad says, my kid just graduated from college. You ought to hire Scottie. So luckily he did. And so I was directing a show, now it was a really small show, and I had to sleep with my camera. I had to shoot a show. I had to shoot a segment every day, because if I didn't walk into the post on Thursday night with, enough material to create a half an hour television show and edit round the clock so that we could air on Friday, then I was toast. And we have to give the money back to the advertisers, right? So that really, I got my chops down on that. But then when I started doing bigger shows that are, that had far like bigger breadth, I mean, I freelanced for a long time, and I had my own company with a bunch of other freelancers in San Diego, where we became so good at all of the positions that a producer needs: camera, audio, lighting, and coordination. But, most of the time we were the technicians. They could just call up and say, I need 3 shooters and 2 audio person and a gaffer. And they would trust that if they came through Tag Team Productions, then they didn't have to ask any further questions. They knew that they were going to get the top quality personnel. So that put us in a great position to just do everything. And so I did have a very well-rounded technical background when I then first started shooting for Surfer Magazine, which was produced out of San Diego, and it was one of the first magazine shows on ESPN. This is back when ESPN was putting on Australian rules football and women, and NCAA women's volleyball in order to stay on the air. Yeah, I was back a couple of years ago. Yeah. So, to answer your question, yes, I did. I came through the technical ranks. One of the most horrifying experiences you could ever have as a camera operator is to be your own editor. You're like, what were you thinking? Jesus, girl, it's called coverage. Why don't you get some, right? So I really made my shooting good, because I would get into the editing suite and realize I didn't have shit to put together here, So I got really good at that, and that really put me in a good place to be a producer. But it was my, international travel experience that was really what got network attention, because not only did I know how to get a crew in and out of a country. On Dude, You're Screwed, we were like, an elite. I'm not going to use any language that would get me in trouble with Captain Shepard, but I was going to say we're an elite fighting force. But we had to get in to a third world country, shoot an entire hour show, out to another third world country, and back to the United States in 10 days.
Wow.
So, and we had 100 cases of gear. There were some airlines in Africa that we couldn't get our gear into the plane because our gear was too big for their little doors, right? So it was a logistical, crazy schedule. We did 8 countries on 5 continents in 3 months in season 2.
Wow.
Yeah. And all shooting a show. Our last day in every location was just brutal, because we would have shot this, the way the Dude, You're Screwed worked was the 5 guys, 4 of them would gang up on one of them and take him down in some sort of a Jason Bourne kind of action sequence. I mean, Terry shot a net gun at John Hudson one time, So, and they chased Terry Shepard into a false elevator one time. And the elevator drove away on a truck. Like, that's how they would catch each other, right? Then they would, put a bag over his head, zip tie his hands, and we would then drop him somewhere in the world by helicopter on the mountaintop and give him 100 hours to get back to civilization. And then those guys would egress back to their dream tent. It was a tent that we designed specifically for shooting in, and it held satellite uplinks. It had weather station in there. It had, GPS tracking, and it had also each guy wore a biometric device on him. If he let his core temperature go too low in the cold or too high in the hot, he would disqualify.
Oh, wow.
And then they would smoke cigars and drink whiskey and laugh at him watching the satellite feed as he's out there starving and freezing to death, in Iceland or Romania or Namibia or Tanzania, you name it. We went there. And then when the guy came in to the 100-hour mark, got back to any kind of civilization, whatever, there was never any, it was just, you touch something that's civilized with a human being next to it, you win in 100 hours. And then they would all get together and laugh about it, right? So that's what we did. Yeah, so that would take 4 days to do. And the last day, then I would have to interview all of them and get all of their thoughts for what we had just done. And it was like a 14-hour day. And that was while the rest of the crew was packing up. The tent packed up into 10 cases itself, right? So then, and I was toast because I was the one doing the interviews. I would be just, completely brain dead by the end of the day. And then we're on an airplane flying, trying to get between Namibia and Tanzania took us 4 countries, South Africa, up to, I don't even remember the route. I was batty, but, to get into some of these places, it's not a direct line, So, but it was some of the greatest times of my career. That was really fun, but it was really the guys that made the show the best, right? Because they had the discipline, they knew how to have fun. And as Terry said, nobody got pregnant, nobody went to jail, nobody's arms were broken. It was a good day.
They all had fun, so it was good.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, because I came from the troops, I came up from actually shooting and recording the audio and editing a show myself. That's what gave me the ability to rise up and be a producer and then eventually showrunner, which is the executive producer who is going to deliver the show. Awesome.
If you can give someone just breaking into the industry, maybe not coming out of college, maybe coming out of the military, and they just say, you know what, I've been a shooter all these years. Now I want to go to Hollywood and work and get my feet wet and then move up to the ranks. What 3 pieces of tips would you give them?
Well, number 1, I would say go talk to people. You don't happen, it's a little bit tougher through COVID, but the Hollywood is a place of relationships. So what sucks is you've got to be able to pay your dues, even if you've paid them already. I mean, I still work for free for friends just because someday it's going to come around that I need that. So you build that relationship. Build relationships is probably the number 1 thing. And I'll make this, call to your audience. If you can give them my Gmail address, and I'm happy to talk with anybody and see if I can help steer them in the right direction. I believe that, I got here because somebody always believed in me. And so I always pay that forward. I'm also really big on mentoring and, but it's on people to maintain relationships. You don't just send one email or go out to one lunch and go, how come I'm not a producer in Hollywood? You got to make that connection. And, it's not always easy, but all of a sudden like doors just fly open. And you're like, oh shit, I better start running, So.
That's good. Then it's great advice. And I think in almost any career, networking right now is the biggest thing to get you in. Sometimes it's not even what's written on your resume. It's who you know that gets you in the door. And
it's always
the body of work will show once you're in the door if you have any of those skills that you put on there. but
Yeah.
it's who you know as you walk in the door. And I think that advice is probably the best advice for any career or any journey you're on in life.
Yeah. Well, I think, and if if you're coming in cold, just the mere fact that you have the gumption to go and talk to someone and maintain a relationship shows that you want to be there.
Right.
Right. And that's what everybody's looking at. At the end of the day, I'm going to be, I'm not going to say the foxhole. I didn't say the foxhole, Terry, but I'm going to be in an airplane, or I'm going to be in a set with you for 17, 18 hours a day for a week. And we're both going to be at wit's end. I want to know that I can trust you and be with you, and that you're still going to deliver when we're both completely bleary-eyed.
Definitely.
And that's what relationships do.
When I can lean on you is the best time when we're both at our zero factor. So
Exactly.
So besides your email, what's a good way to find out what you're up to now or get in touch with you?
My website, zuzabine.com, that keeps all the news that's fit to print. Right now I've got a documentary that is just now going on to the festival circuit called Proud in a Pandemic, that we shot during the pandemic. So pretty proud of that. And that's the best place, zuzabine.com.
Awesome. And that's going across the screen now, and that'll also be in the show notes along with your contact information. Scottie, thanks for sharing. It's a lot of a story to share in a 30-minute time block. And I enjoyed it. It was a good journey, and I'm definitely gonna have to look up the show now and binge watch it during my lunch hours and during my downtimes.
Don't start with the Namibia episode, because you want to see why that one was so gnarly.
Okay, all right. I'll definitely check it out and let you know what I feel about it.
That was the first time in my career where I realized I walked out. At the time, the company that I was making it for, High Noon, had 200 cubicles, and they had 16 shows going on all at once. But I was separated from my crew, who was in the cubicles at the opposite side of the office. And so I came out of my office and I shouted, "I need some C4 and some clown shoes, stat."
Oh, wow.
I walked back in my office. I went, that just came out of my mouth. Huh.
Well, again, Scottie, thank you for taking some of your time this evening and sharing your journey with the Misfit Nation.
Absolutely, Rich. It's been a sheer pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you for checking us out tonight and listening to Scottie's journey, her story. And thanks for being a part of the Misfit Nation. Don't forget to visit our website, themisfitnation.com. Catch up on all our episodes, also to get some of that great Misfit Nation gear, or check out our book that's on there. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are MisFit Nation.